The Middle East has been pushed into a new and dangerous phase of conflict after joint United States and Israeli strikes on Iran triggered retaliatory attacks and drew reactions from governments across the world. Israel said Iran responded by launching missiles toward Israeli territory, while tensions rapidly spread across the wider region, placing oil-producing Gulf states and global markets on edge. US President Donald Trump said the strikes were aimed at eliminating what he described as a security threat posed by Iran and preventing Tehran from developing nuclear weapons. In a televised address, Trump vowed to cripple Iran's military capabilities and called on Iranians to rise against their leadership, while acknowledging that American casualties could follow. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the operation sought to remove what he called an existential threat posed by Iran, urging the Iranian public to overthrow the country's clerical establishment. Iran, however, signaled escalation rather than retreat. A source within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said Iranian attacks against Israel, as well as US bases and interests across the region, would continue unabated. As military tensions intensified, reactions poured in from capitals across the globe. Pakistan joined calls for de-escalation. Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar held a telephone conversation with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, during which he strongly condemned what Islamabad described as unwarranted attacks against Iran. According to Pakistan's Foreign Office, Dar stressed the need for an immediate halt to escalating tensions and urged a return to diplomatic engagement and a peaceful negotiated resolution. China strongly criticized Washington's actions, with Defense Ministry spokesperson Zhong Xiaogang accusing the United States of being the primary source of disruption to global strategic stability and undermining the international nuclear order. Russia condemned the strikes as a pre-planned and unprovoked act of aggression against a sovereign state, warning that the operation risks triggering humanitarian, economic, and even radiological catastrophe. Moscow called for an immediate return to political and diplomatic negotiations and said it remained ready to facilitate peaceful solutions. Oman, which had been mediating indirect US-Iran talks, warned the attacks risk consequences that could not be reversed and called for an urgent UN Security Council meeting to impose a ceasefire, urging Washington that the conflict should not expand further. Across the Gulf, governments moved quickly to assess security risks. Qatar said its internal situation remained stable but confirmed it was closely monitoring developments. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, in a call with UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, condemned Iranian attacks targeting Gulf states and expressed full solidarity with the United Arab Emirates. In a separate conversation, Qatar's emir and Saudi leadership stressed the need for an immediate halt to escalation and a return to negotiations, with Riyadh reaffirming support for Qatar's sovereignty following missile threats. Jordan's military confirmed its air force conducted aerial patrols to secure national airspace after sirens sounded in Amman. Lebanon's foreign ministry condemned Iranian attacks targeting Gulf countries and expressed solidarity with affected Arab states, rejecting violations of sovereignty across the region. European leaders also voiced alarm. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa described developments as deeply concerning and called for maximum restraint and protection of civilians. Germany activated its national crisis management mechanisms and urged citizens in the region to follow safety instructions while maintaining close diplomatic coordination with partners. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez rejected what he called unilateral military action by the United States and Israel, warning it risks deepening global instability, while also criticizing Iran's regional conduct. France's President Emmanuel Macron called for an urgent UN Security Council meeting, warning that open conflict between the US, Israel and Iran carries serious consequences for international peace and security. Italy prioritized the safety of its nationals, activating crisis response units and advising citizens to leave Iran amid deteriorating security conditions. Beyond Europe, reactions reflected widening global concern. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha blamed Iran for long-term regional destabilization but expressed support for the Iranian people. Japan's Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi said Tokyo was preparing for all risks arising from the confrontation, Canada urged its citizens in Iran to shelter in place while reaffirming Israel's right to self-defense and support for efforts preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te said authorities were assessing potential impacts on global energy and raw material markets while prioritizing citizen safety. Indonesia called for restraint and offered mediation, saying President Prabowo Subianto was prepared to travel to Tehran to facilitate dialogue. The African Union warned that further escalation could destabilize global energy markets and worsen food and economic insecurity, particularly affecting vulnerable regions. Meanwhile, Poland confirmed embassy staff in Tehran were safe but said it was preparing for multiple scenarios, while the Netherlands and Belarus both called for restraint and an immediate return to diplomatic solutions. As reactions continue to mount, the conflict is no longer viewed as a bilateral confrontation but a crisis with global economic, political, and security implications. For countries like Pakistan and the wider global south, the stakes are particularly high. Any prolonged conflict risks disrupting energy supplies, trade routes, and regional stability, underscoring how rapidly a Middle East confrontation can reverberate worldwide.